All right, now I'm recording today's session, so I'm hoping that this will work out. I'll give Sarai a few more minutes. Check and see if I've heard from her recently.
Since you're on vacation.
Pardon?
Since you're on vacation.
That's right, she's on vacation.
Jealous.
Yes.
Go on vacation.
Yeah.
Even if it just means like going up to the reservoir and going camping for like a day and a half, like just sounds like
I will. I forgot. I asked her to remind me so I would remember. So what I'm going to do is send her a quick email. I don't know that she's going to be available, but I'll send her a quick email anyway.
There he is.
Hello.
Hey,
good morning.
give you a heads up. There we go.
Yes, sir.
Star's cousin stepped on her computer.
Oh,
It's just white LCD.
broke the screen.
Good luck, God bless. That's all I got.
We don't need it right now because we got CPR today.
Gonna have to give her a loaner till we get a different one, or
You want me to give her one of these over here, or do you have another stash?
we have loaners.
You have another stash.
Bring
Oh,
down
that's
the
fall,
list.
make sure.
She doesn't need it today at all.
Okay. I'll get it. Thanks.
I got the one. I got the one back from the girl she left. So it's good. All right. We'll be there again.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
How was your weekend, Mike?
What was that?
I said, how was your weekend?
Very, very busy.
Yeah.
Saturday, I didn't even have time to turn the computer on.
Oh my goodness.
By the time I got finished with what I was involved in all day long, I was just too tired, and I said no.
And I said no.
I am not going to try and do anything when I'm brain dead.
Mhm.
So, and how about you?
I fell on my butt really hard, but it was a good weekend.
But it was a good weekend.
Mhm.
It was right. So it's migraine on Saturday, being sick.
No fun.
No.
All right. Well, here's what's going to happen this week. We've got a discussion about social media. We'll talk a little about social media today. We have an assignment, which is to be working on your master application. And it's actually due Saturday, week 3, even though it says week 2, since we're in week 3. So I will edit that at the moment and change that. I moved it around and missed that little statement. All right. Okay, so that's the assignment for this week. There also is an assessment, but mainly I want to spend the week getting prepared for mock interviews. Mock interviews will be on Monday. That's when I have an interviewer available. So come in prepared for the mock interview on Monday. And Tim, is it at all possible for you to be here? I know you work, but I'm not sure of your work hours anymore. So if not, then we'll figure out a way to do this via Zoom or something like that. And Sarai, when you hear this, just let you know, and I will send out emails and announcements to remind people that Monday is mock interview day. And what that will be is I have one person, Dennis Baker, coming in, who is able to be here on Monday morning. I don't have a time yet, but we'll get that arranged. Mock interviews generally take anywhere from a half an hour to 45 minutes. We try to simulate the environment, the actual mock interview situation that you're in, which means that you'll come in having applied for your job. The interviewer will have your resume, your cover letter, and the job posting that this is all based on. He will make comments on your resume and cover letter. It will be in addition to mine. Everyone has different views about what needs to be said in those documents, and so he'll probably have a few different things to say than I have, which is fine. That's what we want. We want that variety of opinion. He will conduct the interview. He will work with you. His evaluation sheet will talk about how you present yourself, which will include your dress and your manner, your body language, and other things. It will talk about how well spoken you are. Do we expect you to be a little nervous here? Well, I guess so. But remember that this is a chance to practice. So a little nervousness isn't a bad thing, but we want you to be relaxed enough to know that the mock interview situation is potentially much more benign than the situation you might face in a real interview. And the purpose is to get you to relax and be yourself. Practice your elevator pitch, because that will be a good thing to start with. When the question will tell me a little about yourself, that's a good time to just roll it out. And again, make it sound natural. Okay. The purpose of this is is really to have someone you don't know doing the interview. And that someone you don't know is someone who's been a hiring manager. So done a lot of interviews. They know exactly what they're doing. The entire group. These are people that are volunteers from the outside. So they're actually giving of themselves for this process, which is really, really kind of them. But also, an indicator that they're interested in helping people develop the skills they need. They will give you honest feedback. They will give me, at the end of the interview, they will give me an overall evaluation. The interview itself in my classes is your final exam. That doesn't mean you don't have to show up next Wednesday. We have our accrediting agency in next week, and they plan to be here Wednesday. So we will be in class both days right up to 12:30. If we run out of stuff to do on Wednesday because we're done with everything and you've turned everything in, be prepared to have something else to do, because I will keep you here until 12:30. They may come in and talk to you. They may or may not throw me out of the room when you do that. I don't know. I haven't been through one of those here. And the last time we had an accreditor in, when I was down in Denver, it almost was a non-event. But that was 5 years ago, and times have changed. And we'll have different people doing this evaluation. But we will have that. So let's all be on our best behavior next week. Again, the mock interview, I will not allow that to be interrupted by accreditors. And I probably will end up setting you up in a different room to do that mock interview if I have a different room. Other than that, it'll happen in here and we'll just disappear. Because I will not be in the room for your interview. I do not want to have any distractions. And I want the impression that, that Dennis gets of you to be real. And then he and I will discuss it later. Okay, so that's really the format. So come in dressed for an interview, and be prepared. Just treat it like you would a real interview. Now, we'll talk a little about the issues of dress and body language this week as well, because I really want everyone to be well prepared for this. But let's start off with a bit of other discussion. We'll talk a bit about now about the issue of social media presence. We've talked about this some, but we are in a time when we're seeing more and more emphasis on social media, with a lot of it being directed at two of the social media juggernauts. One is Facebook and the hearings that Mark Zuckerberg is going through in Washington now, was going through last week. I don't know if they're still going on or not. But all of the revelations about what Facebook does were kind of surprising. Facebook looked at, admitted that even people who are not their clients, they have compiled files on. I don't know how you feel about that, but it does bother me a bit. And so if we look at social media, we look at the discussion, the prompt is to do a search on yourself and see what you come through. Well, I did a search on myself, and I think it just quit after it hit 118 million hits. Yeah. Now, of course, I've got a common name, Michael Burke. There's a lot of us out there.
Yeah.
Including the CEO of Louis Vuitton, the clothier. Guy lives in Paris. I wouldn't mind being him. I like Paris, but I'm not him. But also there are multitudes of others, at least a couple of dozen college professors at universities all over the world. So one of the problems with doing a search is how much information you get that's totally irrelevant. So the people that do the searches, of course, have lots of strategies. And they will look mainly at, rather than doing something like what I did, because they're going to look at that and say 117 million hits. Well, I got to do something about that. So they're going to search on Facebook. They're going to search out Twitter. They're going to search out the other social media specifically and narrow things down. Are they still going to get a lot of Michael Burks on Facebook? You bet. In fact, I did a Facebook search for me, and they have me. But here's how active I am. There's not even a profile photograph, right? My only activity on Facebook in the last 10 years has been to post pictures of my daughter's wedding in Denmark 5 years ago. Other than that, I will sometimes look at a post when someone says, here's the latest pictures of our baby. I'll sometimes look at that. But other than that, that's my presence. I have a Twitter account. I have never tweeted a thing. So,
Never tweeted thing.
yeah, I know. It's a really, I don't like, the whole concept just blows me away. But nonetheless, and so here's something that people might think about. If you want to have a chance to actually communicate with people in a way that's hard to find, which does have risks associated with it too, of course. When we talk with our daughter in Denmark, and when we talk in the future with our daughter when she goes to Australia later this summer, we use a service called Viber. I don't know if either of you know about Viber. Viber is a free service that is messaging and telephone and video conferencing. Viber cannot follow our stuff because everything outgoing and incoming is encrypted. And they just today, in light of what's been going on the last couple of weeks, sent out a little note to all of us about their security. Now, do I believe it's impossible for somebody to monitor that? Absolutely not. If there were indeed a system that was completely encrypted and impossible to monitor, you better believe that our security agencies in the United States, the UK, etc., would be all over it, and they'd have figured out how to bust the encryption already. So, I mean, super agencies like the NSA and others are going to do that. But somebody doing a random search on, using a browser, a search engine, would not be able to get those communications. That does not say you feel free to do anything you want on Viber, or there's some others that do that too, but Viber is the one we use because when we travel to Europe, that's how we communicate without paying roaming charges, because it's a strictly internet service. So all you have to do is have connection to the internet. There are other ways of communicating, but nonetheless, the issue of these social media are are really thorny, because there is no such thing as privacy, and Facebook has shown us that. You can't even have privacy if you're not one of their clients. So it really is disturbing. Now, Google is no better. And Microsoft, if you look at some of their stuff, when you use one of their packages, they have taken on the right to monitor everything you do. And you're sort of stuck. Because They own the operating system. Yeah, you can go to a Linux system. You can go to other things, but I have little doubt that all of those systems have been long since compromised. So what that boils down to is that, as I've said before, never put anything that you might regret into emails or social media. You may want to reconsider even saying things over the phone, because we have a surveillance society now. And some of it we buy right into. As soon as you sign up for Facebook, all that fine print in the agreement says we can do anything we want, and we don't owe you a thing. So, you know, these kinds of it used to be all you had to do is keep quiet. Now you can't even keep a diary on a computer that someone can't get a hold of. So the issue really with social media, like anything else, is be aware that people are going to watch things. Now, I will tell you, when I was looking around on the web this weekend for instances of really inappropriate posts, I ran into a bunch of them, most of which I would never, ever reproduce at all, because they were totally inappropriate. I ran into a couple of funny ones, and there was a picture of a what looked to be a Saudi Arabian in a car with a cheetah in the seat next to it. So obviously his pet cheetah. These guys have weird tastes. But you know, a basically wild animal carnivore, I'm not sure I'd want to have right next to me. But anyway, he's sitting there in his car, and he's obviously texting. And the caption there was the cheetah saying, "I'm not sure I think it's safe for you to text while driving," something like that. So some funny photographs. And there was another that was described as a photobomb, a really bad photobomb. It was a woman who was looked to be about 8 months pregnant, standing profile outside, and just as he took the picture, a dog ran up and started to have a poop. And so there's this dog with the tail sticking out, and it's a funny photograph. I showed it to my daughter when I was looking, and she just howled because it was just that accidental picture. But there are a lot of things that are out there. I don't expect you to reproduce anything that would be inappropriate to put into Canvas. So please don't. I don't need any hard profanity or sexual innuendo pictures or any of that stuff that are totally inappropriate. But you'll find all sorts of things out there. You can describe them if you wish. A few years ago, our daughter had a friend in college, well, more than a few years ago now. I had a friend in college who had some self-esteem issues, and she published a photograph of herself on Facebook wearing nothing but cellophane tape. Her friends urged her to take it down, and she thought it was funny and wasn't going to until she got prevailed upon by her friends that was really a stupid thing to do. And she did take it down. But you know what? Somebody has a copy of that someplace. And I'm not talking about intelligence agencies. I'm talking about just random people. So you can't get away from those. And on top of that, I'm not so certain that when you delete something from Facebook, you've actually deleted it. It's sort of like on your computer. Yeah, I deleted it. except that anybody with a modicum of computer skills can drag it back up. Unless you completely, that's why the CIA, when they want to delete things from computers, they reformat, erase, reformat, erase, reformat, and then shred the hard drives. There, physical destruction is about the only real means of getting rid of data that's trustworthy. So if you don't think you'd like to have it known to the world, don't say it. Okay. And that probably goes along with conversations as well. I've had people drag up things that I said in anger 30 years ago and throw it in my face. You said, and I just, oh my God, get a life. That was 30 years ago, and it was under specific circumstances. But, you know, people carry these things, and they remember them. So the other thing was Twitter. We've seen Twitter a lot. We have a president who seems to govern by Twitter. And yeah, I know. I don't even like to think about it because it is very, very unprofessional. Pardon?
Put everything that he does or thinks on Twitter.
Yeah, it's just, you know, and most of us don't care. I mean, I read this morning that he's tweeted up a storm about Comey and his book. You know, all he's doing is selling Comey's book.
Yeah.
Putting advertising.
Yeah. I mean, Comey ought to be sitting there saying, I think I'll do another interview.
Yeah.
You know, I just sold another 100,000 copies. So, I mean, it was just, you know, this whole idea of, and the problem is that you can't have anything that's nuanced. Twitter was never for anything that I could figure. I never saw a point to it. LinkedIn is a little different. It is a professional network. Are there inappropriate things on LinkedIn? I suppose so. I've never seen any, but then I don't spend my life on LinkedIn either. So LinkedIn is more of a professional networking site. People will, and promotion, people will tout their business. They will promote their products using LinkedIn by basically linking you to websites and other things. So that's what LinkedIn is about. It's also, though, a way of colleagues and former colleagues staying in touch with each other. My LinkedIn experience is a little bit broader than Facebook because a number of people that I used to work with when I was in the pharmaceutical industry have scattered because pharmaceutical companies are constantly getting bought up, and then, you know, we go through a reduction in force, and, you know, people are out there on the street looking for jobs, or maybe they take early retirement. But nonetheless, you know, it's a community that I can use to see where some of my friends from the UK or Japan or whatever are these days. It's a way to keep up with it. There are so many others that, you know, it seems like for a while there was a new social media coming online every week. And everyone would say, oh, you have to use this, you have to use that. And I got to the point where with some of our young friends, I said, no.
Can we not?
Yeah. You want to contact me? I'm perfectly happy with text and email and even, God forbid, phone calls. But, you know, forget the site of the week. I'm not going to learn another one every week. I don't care how useful you think it is. So, you know, there is that. But the major ones, our LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I guess Pinterest now is one. Instagram, that sort of thing. A lot of people are using those. I know Zippo about any of them, and I'm perfectly happy to admit to being a Luddite. But the issue is that there are a lot of these. But someone working in a company is not likely to try to do a comprehensive search of everything you've ever posted to any social media. But they will search. And if they see something they don't like, that's a black mark against you. Now, the phrase, see something they don't like, is kind of the key here. Because it's all individual. Just like a sense of humor. Something I might think is absolutely hilarious. You might look at me and say, why is that funny?
Mike, you okay?
Yeah, right. Did you take your meds today? But yeah, and it's the same thing with anything, which is why I caution people always about making too many political comments. There's topics that we all know that you're supposed to avoid. Politics is one. And part of the reason that we want to avoid politics is that we have lost the art of political discourse in this nation. If you don't agree with me, you're garbage, period. You're no good. You're a rotten, un-American so-and-so.
You sound like my stepfather.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of people that feel that way. And on the other hand, the other guy's saying the same thing. Well, you're not on my side of the political spectrum, so you're trash. So we've lost the art of that discourse. So putting anything political has a high probability of offending someone. Even if you say something innocuous or what you think is innocuous, people can take it wrongly. Now, is there any way to stop people from taking things wrongly? No. People will read into things what they want. And if they're looking for a reason to be offended, they will be offended. You can say the sun rose this morning and somebody's going to get mad. Really literally. Now, but most people doing these kinds of searches are going to ignore that. If you haven't been raving that, you think so-and-so candidate for such and such a political position ought to be shot, as long as you're not doing that, most people will say, okay, all right, so he's not my politics. But when can this hurt you? Well, let's just say you're a flaming liberal and you're applying for a job at Fox News. And you've posted all these things on Facebook. Unless they're looking for token liberal as the position, you probably aren't going to get that job. And I'm not picking on Fox News and liberals. I'm just saying these are the way things go. So really, your profile can include all sorts of things. It can include that you are like my father. My father, I don't think, has ever voted for a Republican in his life. Because if you were Irish Catholic in New York City, you were a Democrat. You voted straight ticket, period. And there's another bit of intolerance, right? You have to vote the straight ticket. Doesn't matter if the Democrat's a crook or whatever, whoever you're looking at. But that was the way it was when my father was growing up. And he still is pretty much a diehard. As I said, I don't think he's ever voted for a Republican for anything. And I think that's one of the problems with party politics, and it's one of the problems with our lack of discourse. But so politics is there. Religion's another topic that is very dicey. It is perfectly okay to say that I am a Southern Baptist, or I am some other religious group. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about a Zoroastrian or a Muslim or an atheist. It's perfectly all right to say that in your profile. But there's going to be somebody who will not like it. And again, the people doing the investigation are going to understand that people have the freedom to make that choice. And it might not be an overt problem, and it shouldn't be, but nonetheless, you have those things. You may any of a multitude of things that you want to be careful of. I would say in this society we need to avoid any form of sexual reference, whether it's images or words or thoughts or whatever. You don't want to brag about your exploits and how many women you picked up at bars the last 5 weeks. You just don't want to go through that, because somebody is going to find that offensive on one level or another. You don't want to look at any number of topics that I'm sure you can think of. The object really is, what if you can, and it's hard to do this because you have to step out of yourself. If you can, ask yourself, how does this sound? What does this make me look like? Social media was, Facebook was actually founded as something only available to students. And it was merely a communications tool amongst students. And then when those students started graduating from college, they wanted to continue. And that's why Facebook came into existence as it is today. So it started off as a communication tool and has now become a social connection tool. We have a young friend, daughter of some people that I was in the Army with, who gets on Facebook and just rants. Well, guess what? After about a dozen of these, we unfriended her. Just could not take the constant stream of rants about anything and everything. Not any one particular topic or another. But it really, again, if I were looking at that and looking at what she posts, I'd be a little afraid to have her as an employee. I told you the example of the person down in Denver who really was unhappy working with us, and who put on Facebook how she hated the place and how she was negotiating for a new job. The next day when she came in, she was given 30 minutes to clear a desk. That's another thing you need to be careful of, even when you have a job. You're best off, if you have some complaints about your employer, not to put them on social media.
I can't hear you.
Right. So the object here is to go out and look at who you are in social media. As I said about myself, yawningly boring, which is exactly where I want to be honest. Is that bad? No. I mean, everybody expects you to be there, but if you're not there, it just means that you're a person who doesn't waste a lot of time on Facebook, which means you're probably not going to waste a lot of time on Facebook in the office or on the job. So actually it may turn out, depending on the person's attitude about these things, it may turn out to be a plus. But it's not a negative to be on, it's just a negative to post things that are inappropriate. So we want to take a look and see. Again, I know it's very, very difficult to pull back from yourself because you know who you are, or think you know who you are anyway. I hope you know who you are. But you know who you are and you know what you think. So pulling back from from yourself and looking objectively at these posts might be difficult. But just think of it as not as yourself, but somebody else. And ask what you think of this person. Because we come across one way or the other. All right. And you're asked to find some inappropriate social media posts, and just take a look. I will tell you, there are dozens of websites that compile these things. Most of them are just funny or ridiculous, rather than repeating things that are truly inappropriate. But ask yourself this: if you post on a site that someone is a liar, is that appropriate? What if they are a liar? Does it still belong on that site? Probably not. Right? Probably not. I don't think we've ever explored the issue of slander in the social media context. Pardon?
I know all about
You do. Tell us.
it. Well, it's a personal story.
Okay, well then you don't have to if you don't want to.
My technically ex-stepfather, after my mom announced that she was divorcing him, got on Facebook and started putting all kinds of wonderful stuff on there. So along with the money she's getting from the divorce, she's getting money from it because she sued him for slander.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. But here's one of the issues. There is a suit now going on against, I don't know if you know Alex Jones. Alex Jones is a white supremacist web guy that runs a website that really is all about white supremacy. And he made a charge that in the Charlottesville incident, he charged a person who works for the State Department who happened to be there and who happened to film some of the activities, including, I think, filming the car that plowed into Heather Heyer and killed her, and started accusing him of being a plant of the deep state, which is a phrase that I don't quite understand what it's supposed to mean, but nonetheless, being a plant, and several other rather slanderous things. He also made some really slanderous comments about Heather Heyer, which he could not possibly have known this young woman. And so he was making up a bunch of lies about her. Now, I don't know if her family has sued him, but the guy that he accused of being a plant for the State Department has sued him. He has been sued multiple times for his crap on the internet, and he always buys off. And when you buy off someone by settling out of court, they always demand a gag order. You can't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
This man currently working for the State Department isn't interested in a gag order and is suing with a refusal to gag because he wants it out in court. So we may see some fallout from that. But I think that for individuals like your ex-stepfather, they're more likely to be mostly ignored because it costs money. Now, if you're already in the middle of a divorce, you're spending money anyway, but nonetheless, it costs money to bring these actions with an uncertain outcome. So, but we have to be kind of careful about that, and we have to be really aware that the words we use can affect us long term. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back to here. You all right?
Huh? I felt funny on my neck. Finally got it to pop.
Okay. So, questions, comments?
Yeah.
Either of you active on any of the social media?
Facebook.
Not really active. I
Yeah, I mean,
go there and scroll through it and see some things, but I don't post that much.
Yeah.
I'm bored, sitting somewhere, I'll just scroll through whatever news feed stuff is happening,
Yeah.
About it.
throw my phone down. Like,
The only
I post
reason I have it is
pictures
to
a
keep
lot,
in
but
contact with my family and friends that are not here in town or something.
Yeah.
yeah, me too.
But that's about it. Or post random pic, like if I do something, then I post some pictures, but
Yeah.
I don't like other people that complain and put their private stuff and make a big deal of other posts. I'm like,
You just look at it.
just
Scroll.
move on.
Scroll.
Yeah.
Pretend it's not there.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we joined Facebook when our daughter went to college in Europe because that was the only way we knew what she was doing. She was very private about that, but she would post things, some really beautiful things. She's a writer, as I've said before. And when she was there, she would write some really beautiful pieces that were descriptive of things that she was doing, places she'd gone, and she'd post them. So we joined so we could see what she was doing. And that was our only experience, and neither of us ever posted anything.
Just look at the pictures, read whatever.
Yeah, and the only thing I ever do is occasionally I'll like something. We have a friend down in Westminster who has a DJ business, and he's really good. And so he was asking people to go on his webpage and his Facebook profile, and if we felt like it, go ahead and like him, so it raises his ratings. And we wanted to help Austin, so we did. It's one of the things that we've done. Nothing wrong with that. I like a guy. I like a good DJ. Okay, that doesn't say anything about me.
This guy's a good DJ.
Yeah, he's a good DJ. And, it might say that I like music. Well, so what? Again,
What's wrong with
join another 6 billion human beings, right? But it really is something to consider. I have never liked the whole concept of people being people knowing too many things about me. And it's not that I have much to hide. It's just that I don't see the purpose in it. But we'll have to see how that plays out. Social media is going to have some interesting changes, I suspect, in light of this whole thing with Facebook. I suspect we'll see some demands. Facebook is trying to make itself into not a monopoly. But I wouldn't be surprised if a move to restrict its abilities to do certain things is made based on the Sherman Antitrust Act. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But I would like to see them restricted in the kinds of information they can collect about people who aren't part of their network. Now, I joined Facebook, so I've given them that permission. Not that they're going to gather a whole lot from it, unless they have a way of watching my other activity online, and I have no idea.
I think they do, because if you, well, from my Facebook anyways, if I search on Google or whatever for certain topics, Facebook posts ads based on that. Like if I were searching for rings for my fiance, and they now on my Facebook wall, there's a bunch of ads for different Facebook or rings or wedding venues or photographs. I'm like, you can search on Facebook for that stuff.
Stop.
Yeah, and that's the sort of thing that needs to be restricted, in my opinion. I don't care what Facebook's business model is. That is an intrusive business model, in my opinion. Maybe I'm too much of a libertarian, or maybe I'm just a contrarian, or maybe I'm a total Luddite. I don't know. But I think that's inappropriate.
It is.
I think it's weird.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Well, and I know I'm getting it from several different sources, because I recently joined something called BookBub. Heard about them? It is a service that if you that allows you to be offered books of topics that you enjoy. Okay, and often the electronic versions are free for Kindle or Nook. I don't think they use Kobo or any of that, but they're often free. And you have the option to get them, or you can buy them, through Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever. And all of a sudden now I'm seeing ads for 4 or 5 of these services. I don't want 4 or 5.
I just wanted that
One
Just let
day,
it slide.
one alert a day is enough for me. And so they come up with titles that I occasionally, I will occasionally get. And most of the time I will buy free. I will take the free ones. What do I have to lose, right? It downloads onto my tablet, which has a Nook and a Kindle app on it. So I've got plenty of things to read when I travel.
If it's free, it's free.
And it's free, yeah. But now I'm getting inundated with ads on various other that just appear
Because you use that one.
because I use that one. So I know I've been monitored. And what can I do about it? I don't know, because I don't know who's doing the monitoring. I don't know if it's Google or Facebook or who. Could be random somebody else who somehow or another has snuck in. So anyway, let's take our first break, and then we'll come back and talk about body language and for a while, and then we'll have some time to work on assignments. You will find, I think, in the course media and course home, you'll find some material about dress. Let's see, I'm looking for it now. Dressing for an interview. There's a couple of web links for the looking looking at how you dress. Most of it's common sense, to be honest. But also, you want to look at the company itself. I mean, clearly, Emily, you're going into medicine. You probably will be in a job that will require either scrubs or, in some cases, rather than scrubs, when you're in some practices that I've seen, they will have a company like polo shirt with the practice logo on it. I know Associates in Family Medicine, where I take my mother-in-law, they do that. That and, like khaki slacks, not blue jeans or anything, but slacks. Phlebotomists, however, wear scrubs. So it's going to depend on the position you're in. But when you go to your interview, you don't wear scrubs. They want you to come in and look, a little more professional than that. Not that scrubs are not professional. Medical professionals wear scrubs. But most of the time, if you're actually seeing your physician, they're either going to be in casual professional dress, or they might be wearing a lab coat, or if they've just come out of surgery, they may still be in their scrubs. But they're not likely to see you as a patient. They're wearing scrubs. Doctors don't do that generally.
Mine does.
Depends on the doctor. I said generally.
He loves them.
Well, I mean, they're easy to maintain. They're cheap.
Mm-hmm.
They're cotton. You throw them in the washing machine, and they come out. You shake them off and put them on. So, yeah, they're easy to maintain. And I certainly would never fault anyone for using them in the right situation. But for your interview, go in with professional dress. And this is not casual professional. This is professional. So men would go in wearing a suit, or at the very least, good slacks, a nice shirt and tie, and a sport jacket that match. No loud plaids or paisley or any of that stuff. Don't want to look like something out of a psychedelic nightmare. And plain colors are your best choice. You're not Liberace. I don't know if you know that name or not. He was a pianist, very famous in the 50s through the 70s. Actually, into the 80s, he was performing in Las Vegas. He was well known for flamboyant outfits. Elton John learned from him. It gives you an idea. Only he wasn't as flamboyant as Liberace. And Liberace tells the story of on his tax return, writing off the cost of his clothing for his performances, and the IRS denied it. And so he called for a hearing. And they said, fine, come on in. We'll be happy to talk to you. But street clothes are, you can't claim clothes that you wear to work as an expense. And so he came in wearing one of his most flamboyant outfits. I mean, we're talking feathered boas and suede and sequins. And he walked in wearing that, and they looked at him and said, okay, you can have it.
I'm not going to wear this.
Yeah, tell me I can wear this on the street. Yeah, right. I mean, and someone who's an Elvis impersonator, you're not going to wear those outfits on the street unless you're on the street doing your Elvis impersonation.
Unless you're in Las Vegas.
Yeah, in Las Vegas, you do it. Yeah, but that sort of thing. So, what you want is something plain. For most people, dark colors. Don't go for the funeral look. Don't go for the black suit, white shirt, black tie, looking like you're an undertaker. You don't want to go for the undertaker look. But navy blue or a darker brown works. Again, depending on where you go, you can probably get away in some cases with nice slacks, a shirt and tie, and a sport jacket. But shine shoes, right? A recent haircut, well, yeah. Looks like you've got that one covered.
Yep.
But that, and again,
Okay, but
Where-
you literally cannot afford a haircut.
well, but then you have it nicely styled and clean and maybe pulled back.
There's no way to do that. It's
Well.
it's a god awful mess.
Well, again, nicely done, clean, looking like you've at least, taken care of it. Little to no makeup. You don't want to come in looking like you're made up to be on stage, with the eyeliner and the eyeshadow and everything, which has to be enhanced to be seen by an audience.
Unless you're going on stage.
Well, if you're actually auditioning for a part, then that's a different story. That's a different kind of interview, and so it just depends on, again, what you're doing. The limited jewelry, ear piercings are fine. You're better off going into medical if it's a stud rather than anything else.
I know. It sucks.
Pardon?
It sucks.
Well, there are reasons for that.
I know there are reasons for that, and I know them very well.
Yeah. So, if you're going in for your interview, replace it with a stud. Again, if you're going in for an interview as a tattoo artist, that's a little different, right? It's okay to have the gauges and the multiple piercings and other things because that's the culture. Another one is cologne and perfume, very minimal. You'd be shocked how many people are very, very sensitive to those things and offended by them. And it goes further. My wife was told a story this week about a young boy who was adopted. He had some issues, but he was very, very sensitive to smells. And he didn't have problems at home with bedwetting or any of that. But every time his adopted mother took him to Sunday school, he peed in his pants. And she finally said, what's with this? I mean, you don't do this at home. And he said, she makes us wash our hands, and she has this soap that it just stinks. And when we go to the bathroom, we have to wash our hands. And the soap that she provides it stinks. I can't stand it. So I hold and then lose it. Okay. So some people are that sensitive. And I'm not saying that you'd make an interviewer pee in their pants. But
I went to doctor's appointments and stuff that they're like, don't wear any cologne because we have a nurse or whatever here that's allergic to those kinds of smells.
Yeah. And there are quite a few people who are. And even those of us that aren't allergic to them find them pretty offensive when they're overwhelming. When somebody walks into a room full of people and you can smell them.
And it smells like they took a bath.
Yeah. So you don't want to do that. If you use nail polish, make sure it's fresh. But remember, when you're working in the medical profession, no artificial nails. We don't even really like nail polish.
Stuff is gross anyway.
But it's okay in an interview. If it's attractive, it's well done. You probably don't want to look like you just spent $150 on your nails, which you can easily do.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
So you walk, and so again, minimal jewelry, a ring, fine. On the job, you won't be wearing a ring. not in the medical field. Other fields, different.
Do it in technology.
Pardon?
Can't do it in technology if we're working on the computers.
Yeah, conducts electricity. You got it. So
Zappy.
yeah, so that's when you just don't have them. Some people find that difficult to deal with. I have some friends who say, I would never take off my wedding ring. Now he's on his third marriage, so I'm not sure what that means.
I'm not sure what that means.
He says, I would never take off my wedding ring. And I thought, yeah, you would.
You did it.
He was an EMT and a PA. So yes, he did.
You took it off.
Yeah. So, but nonetheless, there are the things that we do. So you want to, what you don't want is anything that's distracting. And large amounts of jewelry are fine on a jeweler. But even most of them don't wear a lot. If you go into a jewelry store, how much jewelry are they actually wearing? Maybe a little bit more than I wear. They might have a necklace, the guys too these days. And women and guys with earrings, okay. But even there, you don't see a lot. So there's a couple of videos. There's a couple of things you can look at for what happens. Remember, when you walk in the door, you're making a first impression. And that first impression needs to be, this is a good, solid citizen for this job. Okay. This person looks fine. This person looks good.
Not a bum on the street.
Yeah, right. Yeah. If you're like you and me, bearded, make sure that it's all trimmed up and neat. Nothing wrong with beards anymore.
Depends on the profession that you're going to.
Yeah, it does. It does. But there's nothing really wrong with beards in most professions now. When I was a kid, we had gone from my grandparents' generation. My mother's father apparently had a red beard down to about here. Now, he built houses. Okay. And of course, we're talking about somebody born in the 19th century. Different times, different place. You look at pictures of people in the 19th century. Look at all the army generals that had full beards. You don't see a lot of those anymore.
You can't unless you have
Profile.
profile condition that
Yeah. In fact, I arranged for my company clerk to get out with a full beard by talking to a friend of mine who was a doctor, who said, "Oh, sure, why not?" I mean, he's a company clerk. I mean, we're not talking combat here. We're talking about a company clerk in Maryland, And he said, "Sure, why not?" So I got a lot of favors from the company clerk after that. But but in the 19th century, it was perfectly fine. Now you can have a mustache in the Army, to the edge of the mouth, as I recall, and that was it, neatly trimmed. But if you also look back at these 19th century characters, they had hair to their shoulders. Look at pictures of George Custer, So it was different styles. So times changed. Now we're going back to, I remember in the 60s when the hippies, were derided for having long hair. And during the National Western Stock Show, some of the cowboys coming into town and get drunk and go find a hippie and cut their hair.
Yeah.
Well, now all the cowboys have hair that's longer than what they were cutting off the kids back in those days.
Yeah.
So times do change. But again, you look at the position. And as long as it's not heavy machinery, you can have long hair. I mean, I would not want to be working around heavy machinery with hair down to the middle of my back like my son-in-law had. He's got a lot of hair.
I can't have that long hair. I don't like long hair.
Yeah, well,
Once it's touched.
my hair has been longer. It's been shorter.
I've had long hair. I don't like it.
I got it.
Well,
Sick and tired of it.
it comes and goes. I mean, if you just look, I mean, you know, we've got the full range of what's acceptable. But again, it depends on the position. As I say, if you're working with heavy machinery, long hair is probably not a good idea. Because we really need to consider the position itself. So whatever it is, neatly groomed is the key. And we should bear in mind that we're there to make an impression. You may walk in, Cody, you're going to walk into places looking for jobs, and everybody around you will be wearing T-shirts and blue jeans, possibly even cutoffs in the summer.
Yeah.
Or if it's in Boulder, shorts and Tevas in the winter, and a bulky sweatshirt. But the thing to remember is that what you have is you want that impression to be good. Anybody can dress down. They want to know you can dress up. Okay. And quite frankly, we all clean up pretty good. You know, we do. We do. For women, it's a little bit more along that line. The best thing you can have is some sort of pantsuit or skirt suit, straight skirt, or only slight flare skirt rather than, you know, the
You're just
big hoop
listing
skirt.
off things I don't own.
Well, understood, but you're going to have to look at that. They're available. You said something about your mother and borrowing clothes from her.
The only issue is that all of her professional clothes are going to be a lot larger than I am. They would have fit me if I was still a senior in high school, but I've gone from a size 15 to a size 6, so I don't know what to do. Besides look through my drawer of dresses and hope that there's something in there.
I'd start looking, and the thing to remember is that,
Because I don't necessarily have the money to go.
oh, I understand that, and I don't know. I mean, down in Denver, we had something called Dress for Success, which actually would provide stuff like that for students. But I don't think we have anything like that up here. The thing, the key here is neat and clean and modest. Okay, so no plunging necklines, tank tops. Forget. Don't even think about them. You know, go in with nice slacks or a nice, not necessarily fitted pencil skirt, but you know, something that's not billowy and looking like you're ready to be on the dance floor. I would wear, in terms of women, I would wear flats or at most low heels. And the reason is, again, you're not interviewing for a position as a Vogue model. Nor if you walk in, if you're working, especially in the medical arena, if you're working, you can't work in high heels.
I know people who can.
That's true.
Yeah,
don't
well, I
agree with how
can
they live.
tell you, my mother-in-law wore high heels, and I mean, she still claims to be 5'1", and she's more like 4'11". But don't ever tell her she's less than 5 feet. She'll get taken off.
Let her believe it.
But she wore high heels, and her feet show it now. Her feet are a mess. They are really a mess. So one place that the guys have it in terms of fashion over the women is that we've never been required to wear high heels. Unless, of course, you Kiss or Elton John.
That
And
wasn't
then it'd
even
be
a
more like
requirement.
platform soles, right, to enhance your height. But nonetheless, as I said, either low heels and not spike, or flats, either one. Not tennis shoes. Got to have real shoes. Legs should have some form of covering, hose or whatever. I'm serious. Get used to it, Emily.
I hate my life.
No, you don't. When you get
I hate
that
the
first job,
specific
you'll
part
say
of
it
my
was
life.
worth doing.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now, you'll say it's worth doing. Pardon?
How am I going to do this?
Well,
women could wear like nice dress pants, can't they?
oh yeah. Yeah. Just
I got rid of
something.
mine.
I'm not trying nice dress pants.
I wear jeans and scrubs. That is my wardrobe. And sometimes I wear dresses, and that is a very, very good.
Well, think seriously about a dress. Either that or go to ARC.
I know I have some of my grandma's old pencil skirts. They come down to like right below my knees.
That's a good length.
So
Skirts
I
should
can
always
wear
be that length for
one
an
of
interview.
those, but I need to find a shirt. But that will probably be pretty easy if I run over to ARC.
Yeah, a nice blouse. Make sure it's pressed. You don't want to come in looking like you just
Like
know,
I do right now.
Just
well,
grab it from the laundry.
but you can't. Those are not designed to be pressed, right? Not flannels.
You can. You look a little weird.
You do look a little strange in pressed flannels. I know people that do it.
My
Yes,
dad
I know.
does it.
I know a lot of
This
people
is his dress shirt, basically.
Well,
It's got a dress. Hold on, let me iron my shirt. Now really good.
Yeah.
Crisp
We good?
lines.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, I don't.
I mean,
That's
he's a
why I
trained
wear
yourself.
wash and wear. I mean, I used to press my shirts, and then I said, why am I
don't know.
wasting my time?
Yeah.
But if I go in for an interview,
You
You
do.
know, damn
I
well
have
you're
a
gonna press
pressed
your shirt.
I have a pressed shirt and I have a tie. I mean, when I was working in the pharmaceutical industry for a decade and a half, I wore 3-piece suits. So I have a lot of that kind of clothing.
Yeah.
I have a suit that doesn't fit.
That's another thing. The clothing should fit. But for, again, blouses up to the neck, you can have, they can be button blouses, but they're not half unbuttoned.
This is like as low as I
And
go.
And that's appropriate. Not sheer, not for an interview. I have sent students home for wearing sheer clothing. I mean, I don't need to see
All the stuff.
all the other. I don't need to see through your blouse.
No.
And I've sent them
It's not
home
that
for
type of interview.
it's not. It's not an interview for a position with maybe with the chorus line in Vegas, where they expect you to be mostly naked anyway.
I don't
But
have the legs for it. I'm good.
but anyway, keep in mind that dressing is. I would really look at these, and I may add yet another assignment this week, talking about dress. Okay. There is also, I want to say I've got this in here. I thought I put it in. Let's talk about body language. And before we move on, body language is about 93% of communication, according to some statistics. Some places will tell you 90%. Others will tell you, 70%. But the latest research that I've run into tells us that about 93% of our communication is nonverbal. And nonverbal means body language. It also means facial expressions. Let's see if I can find this. Okay, and where do I have that? I can't find it right now. Oh, it's in week 4. Ah, yes. In week 4, the body language video with Amy Cuddy. She really makes a good point about how you walk in with presence. Let me give you an example. My daughter runs the technical side of the theater program at Ridgeview, among other things, Ridgeview Classical School here in Fort Collins. And this week they put on a musical. They do a musical every spring, and this time they did Hello, Dolly, which is a play from the 50s that is actually quite funny. They had this young woman on stage that played Dolly. Now, Dolly is an out there person. I mean, she just is, has this enormous personality. And they had this young woman playing it. She happened to be Indonesian, and she had a voice by God, she's got a voice. And on stage, she had a presence. She looked gigantic. When she was on stage, she was the stage. Her presence was enormous. Well, afterwards, all the kids line up and we go through and talk with them and speak to them. She's this tiny little thing. When you actually are speaking to her, she's about 5 feet tall, and she's about this big around. But on stage, she's just this enormous presence. And it's the way she handled it. It's the way she walked in, the way her facial expressions, her body language took over. She really did. Cuddy's video here talks about how you walk in and look confident. And a lot of her talk is aimed at women. Women are taught to be subservient in this society, far more than any of us probably think about. There's a lot of subtlety to it, but women are taught subservience. And yet, who are our women heroes? Well, people like Wonder Woman. The Wonder Woman stance, legs spread apart, about shoulder width, hands on the hips, and a straightforward look. That is a stance of power, and it's a stance of confidence. And it's something that I urge people, men and women alike, to practice. Because when you practice, do it in front of a mirror. You're going to laugh at yourself silly for a while, but do it in front of a mirror. What you do is you set your brain and you set your body. You teach your body to project confidence. And that's really what you want. You don't want to project arrogance. You don't want to project power, whatever that means. But what you want to project is a confident image that you're capable of doing anything. And so Cuddy goes into that. She also gives a lot of examples. But your body language is one of the reasons body language is so powerful, is that it is less voluntary than the words we choose. Body language comes from reactions. And when you're talking to someone says something that you don't like, your face will show it, unless you are a professional poker player who's learned to control those things. Your face will show those reactions. If people say something that you really enjoy, same thing. These are almost involuntary. And they're not totally involuntary. We can suppress them, but for the most part, they happen so fast that we don't even think to try, for most of us, because most of us are not professional poker players. Actors are better at controlling their body language than others, because body language is 3/4 to 90% of acting. The other, another part of body language is our nonverbal communication is tone of voice. It sounds like that's verbal, but tone of voice says a lot. Choice of words. There are lots of ways to make statements, and some of those ways can be negative and others positive. When you go into an interview, be positive about everything. So again, choice of words, and we go into that in the communication arts class more than we have time for here. But the use of our language says a lot. But body language, how you walk in. I mean, if you sit in a room and you're sort of closed in, you're sitting there and you're sort of hunched over, and you got your arms around yourself, literally, and you look like you're withdrawn, as opposed to an open stance, which means which says, you know, I am not. It allows you to look much stronger, and it says that you have the confidence that you do not make yourself vulnerable by being open. So you really want to watch this video, and as I said, I'm probably going to put in an assignment for this week that will have you discuss two things: body language, what you learned from the body language video, and what you learned from the websites and other things that we have for dress. You know, this sort of sounds like creating an image, and that's exactly what it is. People in politics have image consultants. You know, how do I make myself look attractive to the voting public? How do I make myself still look attractive even when I'm sponsoring a bill that a lot of people don't like, etc. Their image consultants actually coach people on how to look, how to dress, how to come across. We have plenty of examples recently of politicians who obviously don't have an image consultant because they make really silly statements. You know, I was just reading about this governor of Kentucky who had to apologize because he was accusing, or sounding like he was accusing, the teachers going on strike of putting children at risk for sexual assault and poisonings, and you know, just really dumb stuff to say. And the blowback on that, you know, he tried to recover. Well, people didn't understand what I was really saying. No, they heard what you said. You know, because you said it in the words. And, you know, when you do that, you create an impression. If he'd had someone actually help him with constructing that message who knew something about image, he never would have said anything like that. But he did. And he ended up having to apologize for it, which was a good move on his part, probably helped recover some of the damage, but nonetheless, he needed to do that. So I mean, we have these things happening. So we want to do is, again, our image is going to be, when we walk in the door, it's going to be that eye contact. In the United States, eye contact is considered important. In the European American context, you don't make eye contact if you are a Navajo. It doesn't happen. That's a challenge. If you are in the South Pacific with Polynesian culture and you're sitting talking with someone, often you're sitting down on the floor because they sit on mats. You never point the bottom of your foot at the person you're talking to because that's an insult. I walk on you. So, you know, body language, is also culturally specific in some ways. But in this society, good eye contact. That doesn't mean you're glaring at someone or trying to stare them down. You just make the contact. Keep a neutral face. Offer to shake hands. When you shake hands, give a firm handshake, not a crusher or a limp, right? So you want, these are all communication tools that say, I am a reasonable person, I'm confident, I have nothing to prove, I don't have to have the hardest handshake in the world, and I'm not afraid of a handshake. Just really, I don't know if you've probably had some experience with people who give you the wet fish handshake, and it sort of leaves you feeling cold.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is be aware that all of these different kinds of body language will influence that first impression. And if you have a bad first impression when you walk in, you've lost the job. 90, 95, 98% probability that that's the end of it. When you walk out, same thing. Thank you very much. The other thing that we want you to think about, and I want you to do with this interview, is a thank you note. A thank you note used to be write them a letter, thank you for the interview, look forward to hearing from you, I'm very excited about the job, blah, blah, blah. Now we send it by email. Not tweet, not Facebook, none of that. It goes directly to the person and is polite, and even if you don't want the job, you thank them. Even if you think the interview was a total disaster, thank them, because that is the final part of your last impression. If you don't send one at all, that's very negative. And you can salvage sometimes an interview that may have been rocky by simply doing the right thing, and do it within 24 hours. Easy to do. When you go into an interview, you can always get a business card, that sort of thing, so that you can email. The business cards ought to have the email on it.
It should.
These days. I mean, a business card without it is like one without a phone number from as well. So anyway, I want you to think about the wording for that thank you, that follow-up thank you note. And it doesn't have to be long. We're not talking about a 150-word discussion post here. Talking about a simple thank you very much. I really enjoyed the chance to meet you and discuss the company in this position. I'm very interested in the position. I look forward to hearing from you and possibly starting work for you. Something real simple, and let it go at that. Okay. So it's now about 10:30. So what we'll do is another short break, but then I want you to come back and work on the assignments. And we'll reconvene about noon for a wrap-up. Okay? Give you guys a chance to work on discussions, assignments, and I can take a look at adding that other assignment I just mentioned. The more I've thought about it, the more I've decided that that's useful. Okay? All right. Okay. Let's go back. Questions?
Why did I have
None
to
of
fall
right
and break
now.
my butt?
Okay. So what I am going to do is give Tim and Sarai a word to email to me to show that you've actually listened to this recording. And that is, Just want to be sure. Yes, we are recording. That is Tokyo, Tokyo. Just send that to me. That way I'll know you've listened to this. The other thing is I will remind you that we have a lot of assignments that haven't been turned in from some of the students, and we need to get them turned in. Assignments are online and available for 1 week past the due date. The due date is always Saturday at midnight. In extraordinary circumstances, we can talk about extensions, but I really don't like to do that because I don't like to go back and regrade if I can avoid it. However, if there are extenuating circumstances, I'm perfectly happy with accommodating. The purpose of this week's class is to get ready for the interview on Monday. Tim, you need to contact me about your availability. Dennis may or may not be available for you depending on when you're available. I have one other person on tap who can do the interview. So the thing that I want to emphasize is this week's assignments. I know some have been turned in already. There is a second assignment on board so that you're not bored this week with nothing to do. And if that's that being the case, there's not a whole lot more, I think, to discuss today. Let me just take a quick look at something here. In case there's something I have missed. Okay, in the course media, there are a number of things in week 3 of videos that are worth watching. Some of them tend to go a little longer than a few minutes, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, etc. However, one of the things that I urge you to listen to is the optional, videos. One of them is over an hour. It's the top 41 interview questions and answers. You should really view that. You can get some good hints. Take notes. I suggest you take notes. Now, the reason I suggest you take notes is really for 2 purposes. One is so that you remember some of this material and you can review it later. And the other is that once this course is closed out a week into the next mod, you won't be able to get to these things again. So there's a couple of things. If you want to, and I actually suggest you think seriously about doing that, copy these links into another document and save it. They're very, very useful as well. Another of these actually talks about personalizing your job search. I've said before, look for jobs that you're trained to do first. And look for jobs that you have the certifications and other aspects that can make it more likely that you'll get into the interview. But the other is to then remember to personalize your cover letter and your resume for these positions. The last thing you want is to send a generalized resume because it's pretty obvious what it is. You won't have the job title on it that you're looking for unless you're lucky. You won't be looking at how you address the cover letter to the proper people. There's a lot of different aspects to these that are easy to overlook, and we don't want you to do that. So I really would look at these videos that have been prepared. They're very helpful. They're good resources, and I would keep them around if you can, either by, as I said, copying copying this material into another document, or at least, excuse me, not being a good day already, copying material into copying specific items that are of interest to you. There are some duplicates here. The websites for tips for dressing for success or how to dress for an interview have a lot of overlapping information, but they're also slightly different. What to wear to an interview, the new rules. This comes out of Oprah. Read it, take a look at it, and this probably is going to be some sort of recording, but take a look at it, and bear in mind that the new rules may or may not apply, and they may or may not apply because there are an awful lot of people that are doing the interviewing that are playing by the old rules. And the old mantra that conservative is always acceptable still holds. So when in doubt, go to the conservative, and dress accordingly, behave accordingly, and so forth. Conservative meaning we're not talking about political conservatism here or any of that, but just in appearance. Don't be flamboyant. Don't be too modern. It's always a good idea, as I said, unless you're applying for a job at a tattoo parlor, to cover up tattoos. Many people have them, including many people even of my age group, not including me. But you have to remember that when I was growing up, tattoos were something that bikers and sailors had, and neither group was considered particularly respectable. Now, people my age are out there on bikes, riding their Harleys and tattooed. And sailors have become sort of not so disrespected. So bear in mind that the times do change, but you may be dealing yet with people who are still working from the old school of thought. So the issue really is, as I said, conservative approach is always acceptable. So questions? Any thoughts? Okay. So in that case, what we'll do is, again, you can sit here and you can work some more on looking at some of these websites that are in course media in week 3 and week 4. Actually, just go through the course media and pick out some things that are of interest to you. But we've got about 15 more minutes of class, and I don't have 15 more minutes of things to say today. Otherwise, we'll have nothing to say at all on Wednesday. Sounds like you don't mind that at all. Teasing.
My computer's dead.
Your computer's dead. We'll plug it in.
I forgot my charger at home.
Okay. So we're going to stop this recording.